You ever have someone smile at you while gutting everything you've built with a single sentence? I have. And the part that haunts me isn't the words. It's how calm she was, like I was a spreadsheet cell she was highlighting before hitting delete. My name's Marcus Lynn. I'm 47 years old. Until 5 days ago, I was senior brand strategist at Clarity & Company, a mid-sized marketing agency that used to value depth, research, and long-term vision. I'd been there 15 years, longer than any manager currently on payroll, long enough to see the company through 3 recessions, 4 rebrands, and a dozen leadership shakeups. I was there before the ping pong tables, before the Instagrammable kombucha bar, before the interns started referring to brainstorms as vibe sessions. But something shifted after the last merger. The partners brought in a new leadership team, young, loud, confident. Jill, our new CMO, was all about visibility. She didn't care if a pitch had data behind it, only if it could trend. Suddenly, the job wasn't about building trust with clients. It was about writing algorithms. I tried to adapt. I really did. I mentored the younger hires, picked up the slack when teams were short, sat through workshops with titles like Branding for TikTok Natives and Memes as Currency. But there's only so many times you can nod through a meeting where someone explains to you what main character energy is before you realize you're not in the room to contribute. You're in the room so they can say they're intergenerational. So yeah, I applied somewhere else. Quietly, respectfully. Not to make a statement, just because I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, and I didn't want to be the last one standing when it gave out. The posting was for a competitor. Nothing flashy, just a firm that still used words like relationship and reputation in their pitch deck. I didn't even tell anyone. Just sent the resume, closed the tab, and got back to work. But someone must have seen, or forwarded, or maybe Jill had some tracking system. I don't know. All I know is 5 days ago, she called me into the break room. Not her office. The break room. That's where they do it now, by the way. No more HR meetings. No more protocols. Just a casual, "Hey Marcus, got a sec?" And suddenly you're standing next to the espresso machine while someone redefines your entire identity. She was already waiting when I walked in. Her tablet was propped on the counter, and she was sipping from a mason jar with her initials stickered on the side. I remember wondering if she staged it, if she thought the plant in the corner added ambiance to firings. "Take a seat," she said, motioning to one of the stools. I didn't sit. She didn't waste time. "Saw your resume floating around. Bold move." I said nothing, just kept my hands folded in front of me, like I was back in Catholic school waiting for the priest to finish his reading. She shrugged, as if I'd already confessed. "Look, Marcus, you've been here a long time. No one's denying that. But things are moving fast now. We're evolving. The clients we want, Gen Z founders, creators, startups, they want to see themselves reflected. They want to feel heard." I knew where this was going. "You're not what the younger crowd wants," she said, eyes locked on mine, voice smooth as silk. "And that's okay. Every brand has a life cycle." I didn't speak, not because I didn't have words, but because the ones I had were sharp, and I still believed in leaving a room the way you entered it, with control. She tapped her tablet. "Effective immediately. We're revoking your platform access. Just a precaution. Brand alignment and all." And that was it. No thank you for the overtime. No handshake for 15 years. Just a single click, and I was out of the system. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of watching me break. "Understood," I said. "Thanks for the clarity." She blinked, maybe catching the double meaning, maybe not. Then I turned, walked out of the break room, Down the hallway I'd walked 1,000 times, past the desks I used to stop by just to check in. I didn't linger. I didn't make a speech. I didn't even clean out my things. I left them. Every pen, every notepad, even the framed photo of my team, from back when we were still called Clarion Strategies. Before the rebrand, before the buzzwords. I stepped out into the sun. It was too bright, too clean, the kind of sky that doesn't match your mood. I stood there a moment, just breathing, letting the silence do its work. And somewhere between inhale and exhale, it happened. The humiliation settled into something heavier, something more focused, not rage, not bitterness, resolve. They wanted trendy, flashy, viral, fine. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to tweet. I was going to show them what staying power really looked like. For the first 2 days, I didn't do much. Just sat at my kitchen table in silence, coffee cooling beside me, watching sunlight crawl across the tile. You'd think I'd be angry, furious even. But mostly I felt displaced. Like I'd stepped out of my life and someone had already started repainting the walls before I could ask why. The third morning, I opened my laptop out of habit. No calendar invites, no Slack pings, no dashboard waiting for approvals, just a blank desktop, clean as a hospital bed. That's when it started. The memories. The night I canceled a beach trip with my sister because a client panicked over a tweet Jill posted. The time I stayed in the office past midnight, reworking a pitch deck because the junior copywriter froze up and Jill didn't do rewrites. The day I mediated a shouting match between Jill and a project manager while pretending we were just having a lively discussion for the interns walking by. All of it came back. Not with anger, but with weight. I'd carried more than my share, and I never asked for applause. But I never expected the door to hit me on the way out either. I opened my contacts list, scrolled, stopped on names I hadn't tapped in years. People who used to fill the office with real conversation before it was replaced by filters and filmed reactions. Some were grayed out, moved on, maybe out of marketing altogether. But others, I called. It started casual, catching up, swapping war stories, but patterns started forming. One by one, they told me the same thing. Jill had quietly pushed them out. Not always through firings, sometimes just by making the work impossible. Cutting hours, overloading schedules, favoring junior hires with more followers than credentials. She said my writing was too academic. One former strategist laughed bitterly. I have a master's degree in brand anthropology. She replaced me with a lifestyle blogger who thinks call to action means tagging her cousin. Another muttered. And the benefits? Slashed. Health plans gutted, budgets gone. But plenty of money for ring lights and retreat weekends to film TikToks about empathy in the workplace. The culture had rotted from the inside out. All sparkle. No spine. I wasn't looking for revenge when I picked up the phone. I wasn't even looking for a project. I just wanted to understand. I wanted to know I hadn't imagined it. But then, I called Ruben. Ruben was one of the best account managers I'd ever worked with. Steady, smart, the kind of guy who could get a client to approve a risky campaign with just 2 slides and a smile. He left Clarity and Company 2 years ago without much noise, just said he was ready for something new. Turns out that something was Apex 9, a rising consultancy that wasn't flashy, but had been scooping up mid-market clients left and right. Quiet, stable growth, just the way I liked it. I heard about what happened, he said the moment he picked up. I was shocked, man. Actually, no, I wasn't. Not with Jill. I laughed, a dry, tired sound. I've got a project, he added. Honestly, I was going to reach out even before I heard. You've got time? What kind of project? Brand rehab, legacy tech client, good product, terrible messaging. Sound familiar? It did. Very familiar. Because 2 years ago, I pitched a full rebranding strategy for that exact client while I was still at Clarity. Jill shelved it in favor of a campaign involving glow-in-the-dark hoodies and a rented mansion. The client left a month later. "Count me in," I said, before I could second guess. We hung up and I just sat there staring at the screen. It wasn't vengeance, not yet, but it was something. That afternoon I cleared out the guest bedroom and set up a proper home office. Desk, monitor, whiteboard. Old notebooks came down from the shelf. I dusted off frameworks Jill said were 2010. Pulled up documents I'd written and filed away, thinking no one would ever value long-form insight again. The strangest part? It felt good. Not triumphant, not righteous, just solid. Like I was standing on ground that wouldn't shift under my feet. The next morning, I emailed Ruben a preliminary roadmap. He responded with 2 words: "You're hired." And just like that, the silence of the last few days cracked open. Work flowed in, slowly at first. Word spread. People remembered who I was, not the filtered version, not the legacy voice, but the guy who knew what made a brand stick when the algorithms shifted. I didn't talk about Jill. I didn't need to. The best revenge isn't rage, it's relevance. So I leaned in, quietly, privately, methodically. Let them chase trends. I was building something that wouldn't evaporate when the next app update hit. And for the first time in weeks, I slept like I used to, after a long day of real work, not theater. The first time I walked into the Apex 9 boardroom, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about fonts. Not the flashy millennial pink kind. Not the kinetic types that dance on screens for 5 seconds before disappearing. I was thinking about the kind of font you trust on the side of a bank. Timeless, serious, clean. That's what this client needed. A company with great infrastructure, quietly bleeding market share, because someone convinced them to speak in emojis. I had 3 weeks to fix it. The freelance gig Ruben offered had already turned into a contract by then. 2 weeks later, they put me on retainer, and by the end of the month, they offered me a team. They didn't need a thought leader. They needed a strategist. So I did what I always knew how to do. I didn't try to reinvent the brand. I just listened. To the data, to the customers, to the engineers and mid-level account reps who actually talked to buyers. I took the time Jill never bothered with, and slowly, the fog began to lift. We stopped trying to make the brand cool and started making it coherent. Stripped away the trend-chasing nonsense and built something sturdy. Relatable not because it pandered, but because it respected the people it served. That's what Jill forgot. In all her talk of energy and authenticity, she never once asked what the customer needed. She just assumed the crowd would clap if the lighting was right. I saw it coming, but I didn't expect it to crash so fast. It started with a single post, one of those hollow carousels with a white background and bold text. Gen Z doesn't need mentors, just vibes. That was the headline. No nuance, no context. Just a smug dismissal of every experienced professional in their industry. It went viral, in the worst way. LinkedIn lit up with backlash. Articles flooded in. When branding tries too hard. The death of corporate wisdom. This is not how you inspire the next generation. A few prominent clients quietly pulled back. Then one issued a statement, distancing themselves. The company's stock dipped 4% in a single day. I read about it in silence, sipping coffee at my desk, as my team finalized a brand architecture proposal for a client Jill once mocked for being too big to matter. That same client signed with us 2 days later. We didn't advertise it, didn't celebrate publicly, just onboarded them and got to work. The next week, another former Clarity client reached out, then another. Apparently, People remembered how I handled things, back when they were still treated like partners, and not content props. We never said her name. Never had to. There was no need to burn bridges when the ones behind you had already collapsed on their own. The real win wasn't the contracts. It was the feedback. Clients telling us they felt heard for the first time in years, that they could call us without needing a meeting link and a hashtag strategy, that someone finally spoke their language again. One night, after a long presentation, my project lead, a sharp woman in her 30s with a background in finance, not filters, turned to me and said, "You know, people underestimated how tired the market was of being yelled at." I smiled. That's the one thing she forgot. She raised an eyebrow. "Jill," I said. "She built a brand around being loud, but when everything's loud, no one listens. They just wait for it to end." She nodded. "You think she'll bounce back?" "She's got followers," I said, "but not foundations." That night, I walked past our glass conference room and glanced inside. The whiteboard was still covered in diagrams from the session, real frameworks, not buzzwords. It looked like a war room, but a quiet one, thoughtful, focused. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle in. It felt nothing like the chaotic, performative frenzy I'd left behind. This ? This was work. I wasn't chasing relevance anymore. I was defining it. A week later, Ruben called to let me know we'd landed another former Clarity account. I didn't ask which one. Didn't need to. At this point, the pattern was obvious. The ship was leaking, and we weren't pulling people off the deck. We were just opening the door to the ones who'd already jumped. And every time another name crossed my desk, I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just added it to the list and got back to work. Because this wasn't about her anymore. It was about remembering who I was before someone told me I was obsolete, and realizing that the market didn't forget. It just needed a minute to catch up. The ballroom was packed. Rows of brushed chrome chairs, glowing panels, branded water bottles. Everything engineered to look futuristic. I stood backstage, smoothing the edge of my jacket, waiting for the moderator to call my name. Bridging Generations in Leadership. That was the title of my talk. A bit on the nose, maybe. But I knew why they picked me. Not because I was flashy, not because I was trending, but because, somehow, I was still here. The light dimmed, the room hushed. A voice echoed from the speakers. "Please welcome Marcus Lynn, Senior Strategy Advisor at Apex 9. I stepped onto the stage to polite applause. Not roaring, just steady. Like the people here knew they came to listen, not perform. For a second, I scanned the crowd, not really looking for anyone in particular. And then I saw her. Jill. Back row, no badge lanyard, no panelist title, just another attendee. She looked thinner than I remembered. Tired, eyes hollow, like she'd been squinting too long into the glow of screens that never blinked back. She didn't smile. Neither did I. I walked to the podium, nodded once, and began. When I started in this industry, we had no hashtags, no reels, no metrics for authenticity. What we had were stories, not the kind you tell to get likes, the kind you tell to be understood. The room was quiet. People were actually listening. That always startled me a little. How rare that had become. We talk a lot about disruption, about throwing out the old. But in the rush to go viral, we've forgotten something simple. Foundations don't trend. They hold. And if you build on nothing, well, you collapse at the first hashtag. That got a chuckle, even from the younger ones. I spent the next 20 minutes weaving through the idea that experience and innovation aren't enemies, that mentorship isn't a relic, it's an amplifier, that you don't have to burn the past to light the future. And when I finished, they clapped again, louder this time. As I stepped off stage, I didn't look back toward Jill. I didn't need to. Some truths land louder in silence. Backstage was a blur of handshakes and quiet thank yous. But two stood out. "Marcus?" a voice said behind me. I turned. It was December, one of our old UX leads from Clarity. And beside him, Allison, a senior copywriter I hadn't seen since she moved to freelance after Jill slashed her department. They hugged me like I'd just come home. "You heard about Jill, right?" Dev asked. I shrugged. "Bits and pieces." "Extended leave," Allison said. "Unofficially. Board got tired of the fallout. That Gen Z post was just the last straw." "And get this," Dev added, lowering his voice. "Remember that memo you wrote about brand legacy back in, 2019? They're circulating it now, rebranded as Internal Strategy Framework. No credit, obviously, but we recognized the wording." I laughed, a short, dry breath of irony. "They're trying to undo the damage," Allison said. "But without you, they're just repackaging values they never respected." It didn't sting. Not anymore. It just confirmed what I already knew. Ideas don't die. They outlive the people who bury them. Later, I slipped out of the conference center and walked the long stretch back to my hotel. No entourage, no photos, just quiet. Downtown was glowing with ad displays and branded pop-ups. I passed one from Jill's old firm, blank, just a gray screen with a flickering placeholder text, "Content coming soon." Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe someone had already pulled the plug. Either way, it felt fitting. When I reached the crosswalk, I glanced at my reflection in a shop window. Same suit, same face. But something in the eyes had changed. Not hardness, not triumph, stillness. The kind that comes after weathering a storm not by yelling into it, but by learning how to walk in the rain. The industry hadn't changed me. I'd outlasted the parts of it that tried. As I crossed the street, I thought of the first slide in my keynote. A single phrase, center-aligned, black text on white. "Trust doesn't trend, it endures." Turns out, so do people. The offer came on a Tuesday morning in a plain envelope on my desk. No fanfare, no dramatic reveal, just a typed letter with my name at the top and a new title beneath it. Executive Director, Brand Strategy. Permanent. Full authority. No probation, no second guessing. I read it twice, then looked out the window of my new office. It wasn't on the top floor. Wasn't even a corner suite. But it had what I wanted. Room for a table, a wall-length whiteboard, and space for people to walk in and sit down without feeling like they needed a script. I didn't say yes right away. Not because I was unsure. I just wanted to be clear on one thing before I signed. I met with the partners that afternoon and told them plainly, if I accept, I want full support to build out a mentorship pipeline. No PR fluff. Real structure. Real time invested. I want to make sure the next generation has better guidance than I did. They agreed. And that's how it started. Not with speeches or press releases, just two hires. Maya, a sharp young strategist with more raw instinct than Polish, and Theo, a quiet research analyst who noticed things most people skipped. I sat with them every week, not just to assign tasks, but to teach. How to lead a conversation, how to read between a client's words, how to push back without posturing. They were green, sure, but they listened, really listened. And maybe that was the thing Jill never understood. Influence can be bought, algorithms can be gamed, but mentorship, actual investment in someone's growth, that can't be faked. 3 months in, Maya built her first campaign pitch. It was concise, smart, and most importantly, honest. No gimmicks, no filters, just clarity. Theo followed up with a metrics model that proved something we always knew, but rarely quantified. Trust converts better than trends over time. They were learning. Not how to be me, but how to be better than me. That's the point, isn't it? One night, after everyone had gone home, I sat at my desk cleaning up reports when an old headline caught my eye on a marketing forum sidebar. When culture goes too far, a cautionary tale. It was posted anonymously, but the tone was unmistakable. I clicked. It opened with a soft apology. There was a time I believed disruption was the only way forward. Then came the typical jargon. Decentralized leadership, authentic presence, recalibrating internal value propositions. Buried somewhere in the middle was a line about learning to listen again. That's how I knew. It was Jill. There was no name, no company logo, just a vague confession wrapped in influencer syntax, a digital shrug aimed at no one in particular. I didn't finish it, just closed the tab. Not out of anger, not even pity, just disinterest. Some stories don't need conclusions. They just stop mattering. I powered down my computer, grabbed my coat, and took the long way out. The city was quiet, one of those early autumn nights where the air smells like a page turning. I walked down the same streets I used to commute through, past the late-night cafes, the shuttered boutiques, the billboards half-lit and blinking. Eventually, I reached it. The old office building, Clarity and Company, or whatever was left of it. The logo had been removed. A scaffold stood in its place, wrapped in mesh and dust. Maybe it was being gutted. Maybe someone new was moving in. Either way, it didn't matter. I stood there a moment, watching the wind tug at the tarp. It looked like the building was trying to shed its own skin. Funny, all that noise, all that performance, and in the end, nothing left to say. I turned the corner, hands in my pockets, listening to my own footsteps on the concrete. That's when the thought came. Not dramatic, just simple. Clean. Turns out the younger crowd didn't need someone trendy, I muttered aloud. They needed someone steady. The words settled into the air behind me, soft and final. I didn't stop walking. There were better things ahead. And finally, I had the room to build them right.